All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another Serious Angler podcast. This is episode number 129. And we're going to welcome back to the show Mr. Greg Blanchard, a friend of mine, former New Yorker. We're going to get him on here to talk about his 2020 tournament season, what's happening for him, what's coming up. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of different stuff, but it's going to be good to have him back on the show and talk a little bit about what's going on in California, first of all, and then a whole bunch of different stuff, especially, for any kayakers out there. You guys have definitely come across his YouTube channel. We'll talk a little bit about that, talk a little bit about tournament kayak bass fishing, and then go from there. But without further ado, we got him queued up down here. Nope, he was queued up. I think he disconnected. But we'll give him a second to join back in here. But huge shout out to Douglas Outdoors. Thank you guys for your constant support of the Serious Angler podcast. If you guys can, go down the links below, take a look at a Douglas rod, and we'll talk a little bit more about Douglas after the show today. But we got Greg queued up back here. What's going on, man?
Bailey, what's happening? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. I think cross our fingers. I think this will work.
Sweet.
Well, I always have technical difficulties over here for whatever reason. I haven't done a lot, but every podcast I've done, I feel like I've either dropped or there's mic issues. So we'll cross our fingers for this one.
I hear you, dude. Well, like I've told you in the past, this is nothing professional. So we have technical difficulties on our end too. So it's okay.
I don't know about that, man. I see what's on my screen. This looks pretty professional. It's legit. I'm not sure what this is, but it's nice. I like it.
Yeah, it's a new thing because Skype was just becoming horrible for me. Like the service was terrible. It kept crapping out, and it wasn't like a Wi-Fi issue, and it was just kind of getting plain. So it's super easy. It took me 30 seconds to build this. It was Bailey friendly, user friendly. So I was able to make it real quick. But dude, are you back in Cali now?
I am. I'm back in Cali. Yeah, it was crazy. Those 2 weeks in New York. It wasn't a planned trip. It was kind of last minute. But dude, as soon as I left California, like the fires just went crazy again. And you probably saw in the news when they showed pictures of like San Francisco, that orange sky. Yeah, that was all that pretty much happened as soon as I left. So stayed home for 2 weeks. It was a good time. And yes, I'm back in California. It's like 96 right now outside. So a little different.
Yeah, we could see the raccoon tan lines going on.
That's one day. I'm telling you, that wasn't from New York. That was from 2 days ago. I went fishing out on the Delta. One day, and that's all it takes for me.
That's funny. I lost mine now that we're down in the 60s and 50s again. But yeah, it's terrible seeing what's happening in California. I have a really good friend of mine who's stationed in California in the Coast Guard, and he sent me pictures of him just sitting on his porch, and the sky is just red. And it's just horrible. But does it look like things are getting a little bit better? I know they just had a tournament on Clear Lake, but for where you are, does it look okay? Does it look like it's getting any better?
Unfortunately, this right now is like when it's typical fire season. So I hate to say it, but everything prior to this was a devastating bonus. So there's some fires up in Napa again. They had evacuations in Napa and around that area, wine country. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm in an area that's across my, knock on wood, it's pretty protected. But we definitely we'll get the smoke, and it's just chaos.
I heard that. Yeah, that's brutal. I've heard that this crazy fire was caused by 2 gender reveals or something like that, something silly like that.
Yeah, I heard that too. I mean, this silly stuff can start fire. I mean, everything's so dry around here. It just it doesn't take much. So
imagine being that kid, learning what you've done, learning what your parents did.
Yeah, because in today's age, if you do something, it's there forever.
Right? And, you can't get past it.
Poor kid.
But dude, just to kind of start off, I know we've been talking on and off, but how's your season been for 2020? It seems like you've been doing pretty well over in California, and you you're about to do some traveling as well.
Yeah, man, it's been a different kind of tournament year. Started off, I think we had a couple of tournaments in, the very beginning of the year. I went to Fork for the bass event and did terrible there, so that was a bad start. And then I came back to California, did one tournament, and then we had like 4 or 5 months without tournaments.
Something like that.
Which changed everything though, because what they did, and I think a lot of tournament series did this, but they kind of overloaded the summer schedule. So I know for me personally that the summer was just crazy. I mean, June, July, August, especially August, it was like August was a tournament every weekend. A couple of them were 2-day events. So a lot of tournaments this summer once, we got the go ahead, but it's been good, man. Like I've had my fair share of good fortune. I don't know why it seems to happen every so often, but I've had some good luck in tournaments, and I've got a few more for the remainder of the year. I've got a TOC for the Wild West Bass Trail on Clear Lake in a couple of weeks. Assuming the fires are okay by then, but we'll see. Yeah. And then a TOC for my club tournament out here in California, Kayak Bass. But that's pretty much it. I can't make the NCs, unfortunately. Just couldn't make it happen. A little bummed about that, but it's been a weird year. But we fished a lot of tournaments. Yeah,
that's I think that's one of the big reasons why you get a big draw to your YouTube scenes, because you don't see guys putting out kayak tournament stuff, and you do a really good job with it. And that's why I enjoy it, is because I'm competitive. I like to do the tournament scene. But it's cool kind of how you break everything down. But I have your channel right here, and it's just like every other video is tournament, practice. Yeah, you were loaded with them, man. But I mean, it's a big time commitment. So I imagine your schedule has to be hectic between work and then practice, and especially weeks that you have the 2-day tournaments. I mean, I can't even imagine what that week's got to be like for you. That's got to be insanity.
Yeah, I mean, luckily I have a really flexible work schedule. But yeah, like I said, August, dude, it was crazy. Like we had, what do we had? We had a Kayak Bass KBF one weekend. We had a Wild West event. We had Hobie BOS on the Delta, and then we had Bassmaster on Clear Lake, all 4 weekends in a row. So that was definitely a grind for me personally, just because, I know you know this too, but like if you're gonna do some editing, it typically works out better if you do it like right after you finished your day, just so things are kind of fresh in your mind. And so that was a pretty tough. It was a grind of a month for me. It was a lot of fishing and sitting at the computer, but yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's worth it, but I can see why other folks like don't do it as much, because I mean, and I'll admit this too, when you're fishing a kayak tournament, or any tournament for that matter, the last thing you really want to do is make sure your cameras are right. I mean, I do, but like it takes away from the fishing. So, it can be tough to commit to that, but I'm just used to it at this point.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I've mentioned before. I stopped making fishing videos. I still post to YouTube I've kind of reoriented the YouTube channel to just, essentially just podcasts. And that's one of the things I've noticed since I've stopped putting a GoPro in my kayak, is I kind of have like a new level of focus when it comes to practice and tournament fishing. And it's kind of helped me elevate a little bit, at least it's what I've felt, at least mentally. And it's kind of a different perspective. But I imagine at this point, with how long you've been doing the YouTube thing, that it's just kind of second nature now.
It's second nature. And I agree. I think if you have more time, you're not messing with cameras, you're not worried about, getting good shots or talking as much. But it's odd because, I think you look at some of the other guys out there fishing tournaments and doing it and having a lot of success. I mean, like Scott Martin, Jacob Wheeler. I know there's more, but as soon as they put a camera on their chest or whatever, like they did a series, even like Mark Daniels Jr., when he had, that year he was on Circuit Breaker. It's weird how like it seems like you may do better in tournaments. And I will say maybe one of the reasons is because it's going to go on YouTube. So If you have a bad day, if you spin out, I mean, that's going
Yeah,
on YouTube. At least
yeah,
for
you don't
me,
want
it
people to
was.
see that.
So I think in a different aspect, for me at least, I try to focus the whole time, because not only for myself and I want to do good, but the audience as well. I don't want to do terrible. So
Yeah,
there's that pressure too.
yeah. Well, I'm sure talking through it too. Obviously, you're talking to the camera, but you're also kind of helping yourself, I guess, essentially not spin out, but kind of telling yourself or giving reminders, talking through things, and that can kind of help you break down your day and maybe refocus if you're in a slump. Like I remember when you were on Clear Lake and your grass fish weren't biting as was it the second day as good as you wanted to. But I imagine, I mean, I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm saying I imagine in that standpoint, maybe talking to the camera, talking through things can kind of help you refocus and wonder, okay, how can I get back on these fish because they couldn't have moved that far, right? I don't know. Maybe something like that can kind of help you. But
Absolutely.
yeah. So one thing I'm curious about, just because tournament angler, kayak angler, I'm in November. You know me, I've only stayed in New York. I've fished tournaments in the kayak in New York. But in November, I'm headed down to the Lake Chickamauga to do the Bass Nation, one of the national tournaments they have down there. And just because I'm curious, when you head to a big body of water like that, because I'm sure Clear Lake is massive, and then Delta, there's so much that it's probably overwhelming. And I know you spent a lot of time there, but when you go approach these massive lakes, what is your kind of mindset or your strategy and how to break things down? Like, what do you kind of go through? Do you have like a process or at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. Hey, first of all, congratulations, because you won an event, right, to qualify for that?
Yeah, I won the New York State Championship through Bass Nation.
Yes.
So
Yes, that's awesome. So
yeah,
congrats, man. That's
thank you.
really cool. That's gonna be
I
a
appreciate
fun trip.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, man, good question. And it's totally different from a kayak, of course, because as you know, our one big disadvantage is covering water. I mean, granted, we have motors nowadays, except I don't think you can use motors for the. Can you use motors for this one? The Hobie one?
I think for Bass you're
For
allowed to. I think
bass,
Hobie you
bass you
can.
can, right? Bass you can.
Yeah,
But either way, even if you have a motor on there, I mean, you're still maybe going to cover
yeah,
15 miles if you're really trucking all day. So, I mean, I think it starts with me, just like everybody else. You do the navionics, you do the Google Earth, you do the seasonal patterns. You look up YouTube videos. I like to look up past tournaments, local tournaments, see what the general winning weights are. And then I just try to break down a part of the lake that is near a ramp that has a lot of things to offer, I guess you could say. Because the one thing that I've noticed with tournaments and doing well is that your plan is probably not going to go as planned. So I like to have option A, option B, option C. So when I pick a part of the lake to do my practice on, I want to make sure that there's like some different stuff that I can fish. I can fish shallow. I'll look on Google Earth and see if there's like fallen trees or timber. I'll make sure that there's maybe like a creek channel nearby, or some deep water access, or maybe some points, some islands. I try to find my first practice location in an area that offers a wide variety of different ways to fish. And usually, I can get an idea as to what the lake's doing on that practice day if I can, cover those things. So on a huge lake, you're gonna find 20 different spots that all probably have that. But I feel like there's always good fish to be caught in a lot of majority of the lake, especially this time of year. So time on the water is big. So that's usually how I approach, a big lake if I'm going there for the first time.
cool. Yeah, it's definitely gonna be something, especially because it's a TVA, that it's just gonna be a whole new learning curve for me. But nonetheless, it's fall, which is a time of year I have the least amount of time put in on the water, just because of school. And usually I'm in a tree stand, and I'm trying to knock down a time in the tree stand this year and spend more time on the water. But it's definitely going to be interesting. But I mean, we'll see how it goes. The opportunity at a mega giant is going to be weird too. Yeah. Like around here, the opportunities we get in New York at a mega giant are like maybe big smallmouth, but like you're not like the chances at a 7-8 pound largemouth are extremely rare.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That opportunity is pretty cool and kind of enticing in itself, but it should
definitely,
be fun.
man. Yeah, you never know this time of year too. And one thing I'll add to what I was saying before. One thing I'll add is I always, and I try to do this as much as I can, but I always try to fish my strengths. You go to a new body of water, you hear, oh, they won the tournament this time of year, fishing ledges, cranking 25 foot. Well, that's not me personally. So I try to fish my strengths too, and I try not to, deviate from what I know I can catch them on. So that's the only other thing I'll add.
Yeah, no doubt. That's pretty similar to. I just had Alton Jones Jr. on, and his podcast is actually airing tomorrow. And he had mentioned kind of the same thing where they had that super tournament on Lake Chickamauga, and he had went on to say how when it comes to ledge fishing, he's horrible at it. So I might as well stick to my strengths, go shallow, do things that I'm familiar and comfortable with, rather than go share a spot with 4 or 5 other guys and not know what I'm doing and take a chance. You might as well go shallow, do something different, which is, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but John Cox, he's a shallow water guy, right? Yeah. He always seems to make it work shallow. Somewhere on the lake, he finds a shallow bite. So if you're willing to put in the time and, make some smart decisions, you can make it work most of the time. So.
Yeah, no doubt. Like when you're offshore fishing, there's certain signals and key notes that you look for, and that's no different than shallow. Shallow, the general population, I think, of anglers look at shallow fishing as find a bank and just start fishing. But I think there's those guys like a John Cox that can see bank and know the differences between the two, what exactly he's looking for, what's going to hold fish better, and that's why he does so well up shallow. It's kind of the same things as those who look for stuff offshore and do all offshore. Yeah, but absolutely. No, 100%. But did you through the Bass Nation at Clear, did you qualify for the NC for bass?
I did, and you know what? I don't even know when that is.
It's in
next
March.
Year. Is it?
Yeah,
right before the Classic.
Yeah, it's in conjunction with the Classic, so it's like the 2 days prior. So it's like the Wednesday. No, I think it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, because then the Thursday is awards or something like that. So it's like day 1 of the Classic is when they have the top 10 from the kayak. Yeah. I believe. I could be wrong, but it's supposed to be somewhere in Texas, but they haven't announced the location yet.
Ooh, Texas.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. If I can make it, I will be there. Dude, like I think I have it scheduled for like December. Like I have on my schedule in December, figure out 2021 tournament schedule. Like right now, I have no idea. I don't know where I'm going to be living or working or whatever. So I'm saving that for December, but I'm going to try to make it if I can.
Yeah, I have that whole week off because I'll be fishing the NC, and then either way, I have to be at the Classic to work that one. But I hope by December they at least announce the location of it. I know the Classic's supposed to be at Ray Roberts, and there's like 8 lakes around there that you could hold a kayak national championship on. So it's gonna, as long as it's not Louisville, because every person I've talked to says that Louisville was horrible. So as long as it's not that, that's completely fine. Fork is 2 hours away. That could be manageable. But
Fork, that'd be fun.
Fork in March would be that would be a blast.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
It would set up like a couple of our New York lakes do here in May, so it'd be kind of in the wheel.
Gosh. Yeah, that's another trip I want to try to fit in the schedule next year. Is New York in April, May.
Yeah, because you missed out on that this year, right? Because of COVID.
Yeah, I was gonna do it again, like I did the year prior, but COVID kind of changed things. So hopefully next year we'll get that New York trip in, and hopefully they do some tournaments during that time frame where I can participate a little bit, and maybe the restrictions will be a little more lenient. So
heck yeah, 100%, dude. I'm looking forward to Texas though, without a doubt. That should be a blast.
Yep.
I've yet to fish a 2-day derb before, so that'll be a learning experience in itself. Yeah. Because I've always qualified for the national championship, or in the 2 years I was able to do the state championship. College classes got in the way, so I wasn't able to fish those, unfortunately.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, dude, 2-day tournaments are no joke. They're it's definitely different. It's definitely different. It's a lot more mentally draining, I think. I remember Louisiana 2019, the national championship, and then even the year before Kentucky, the 3-day events. Oh my gosh, I don't know how the boat guys do 4-day tournaments and then 3 days of practice on their boat. Like, it's crazy to me. I don't think people realize like how much like fishing can like just drain you.
Mentally taxing, yeah.
Oh yeah, like especially depending on your motors make it easier for sure. Pedals make it easier. Fins make it easier. But if you're a guy out there, using a paddle or even still like human power, dude, after 8 hours of fishing hard and doing it again, it's definitely different. But it's exciting too, because it gives you a chance after day one. So I like 2-day tournaments personally better. I hope that eventually, like, all the major series and tournaments go to 2 days at least, but they're different.
Yeah, it definitely it definitely highlights those who really know what they're doing and break down the deal. I mean, it definitely takes a certain angler to do well consistently on a 2-day basis.
I think, I agree totally. I think what it does, it definitely just it really narrows it down to who earned it, who deserved it. And it was like the same argument back in the day when they did gosh, I think you and I fished maybe a tournament in New York where it was a 3-fish limit. Best
still
3.
are.
and there are still some, and it is what it is, but like as soon as you go from 3 fish to like 5 fish, like it definitely weeds out some who earned it or not. And it was 3 fish turn. We had them back here in California a couple of years ago, and man, all it took was like a giant and then like 2 okay fish. And if someone stumbled upon a giant and 2 okay fish, you're there. But 5 fish at least, you got to catch 5, and you got to have some consistency to your bag. So I agree. I think 2 days will definitely be better, better for the sport and the competition.
Without a doubt, yeah. The sound of a 3-fish limit tournament and the spawn is not an appealing thing to me. It's hard to set yourself apart from that, because I mean, anyone can go shallow and throw around a wacky rig. It's not knocking anything. It's just it's just one of those things. Like you mentioned, that 5-fish deal sets people apart for sure. But one thing I was curious about, because I didn't bring it up the last podcast when I had you on, and I've never actually asked you this personally, is adjusting to the delta, so that tidal fishery. It seems like this year you can definitely see it through your videos. You're learning a lot more on how that place works and how it sits up and how to adjust with it. But say like somebody who's a first-time fisherman when it comes to, let's say, take the delta specifically. When you bring up that I don't even know what resource you use. What do you use to read the tides for the delta? Is there some sort of weather source type of deal that you look at?
There's a bunch if you do a Google search. I use like Willy Weather. They give me tides for a bunch of different locations, because it depends. I mean, the delta is so big. There's different tides at different places. So, you could run north at a certain time and south the other time, and the tide's completely different. So, Delta Tides, Delta Boating is another website I use. But yeah, tides have been the biggest adjustment in learning the delta. I mean, the delta, it is a great fishery, don't get me wrong, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but it is also, it is tough too. It is it's not surprising to go out there and catch 1 fish and it's sunk, or, it's happened plenty of times to me. But it is, an opportunity to catch a giant fish or multiple giant fish. But yeah, for me, just the experience has really taught me how to fish it better, picking better tides. I have, there's different, tide theories. I personally like to fish an outgoing tide. So start my day early on in the morning, water's high, and I'm fishing all throughout that morning and there's a dropping water, for me, that just means like fish are coming out from under the cover, they're chasing stuff. So in general, nowadays, I usually like to pick a outgoing tide to start my day. But some people like an incoming tide too. I think what trips me up still and trips up a lot of people is when you get down to a dead low tide, a slack tide. And it's crazy. Like you'll go out into certain parts of the Delta and it's a low tide, a real low tide, and there's like no water. Like the bank is completely exposed. I mean, it's like, where do these fish go? So that can be tricky, and you have to find areas that still have some current and some deep water. But for me, again, it's just been experience and learning different areas and a lot of trial and error and getting my butt handed to me. And I still do, and I still will get my butt handed to me because the Delta can be like that. But it's, man, for a first timer, I would say, pick an area that is protected, because that's the other thing with the Delta. Like certain parts of the Delta are wide open, and man, I feel like it's always cranking on the Delta. The wind is just brutal. I don't know why, but I'd pick an area that's a little bit more protected. Some of the backwater sloughs, and just go fishing. Go fishing if it's your first time. See what it's about. Fish what you like. Be mindful of the tides. Try to just know when it's a high tide and when it's a low tide. And like we talked about, fish what you're comfortable with, because you could tell someone, you can give them as much advice as you'd want, but dude, just like time on the water is always the biggest thing. For me, at least, that's what has helped me over the years. And every trip out, it's just like time on the water. You just can't substitute it.
No doubt. Yeah. You can only watch so many YouTube videos and read so many articles, and it still doesn't replace the guy who's actually on the water doing all that. So
exactly.
100%. But like, I'm kind of curious. So like you said, you like a outgoing tide. So essentially, what would that do? So like if you're fishing mats, would that suck fish to the edge of mats so that you can just go along with like a chatterbait or something like that? Is that essentially how those fish set up with that?
In theory, yes. So basically, when that tide is high, those fish could be anywhere. I've actually found, like, you'll see on parts of the Delta, like a channel or whatever, and there'll be like a 30-yard mat from the bank out to the channel, like a 30-yard mat of hyacinth, stuff you can't get through, not even with a bass boat. And on a high tide, usually those fish are tucked way up in there. They're way back there where you literally could not get a bait to them if you tried. Maybe if you're on the bank, you might be able to get to them, but from the middle of the channel, you cannot get a bait back there. And I like that tide, that moving tide, because I feel like it gets the fish moving, for one, and it starts bringing them out, just like you said, towards the edges of the cover. I mean, it has to. They can't go anywhere. They have to come out with the water. And as it starts to creep down to, a lower tide, that's when they start to get sucked under that isolated cover, the edges of the mats. Right now, and actually starting at the end of August, but end of August through, I'd say, mid-October is like a phenomenal punch bite from what I found on the Delta, because when those tides get really low, like for whatever reason, those fish just get drawn to any mat, any piece of cover. And it's pretty thick right now as far as the vegetation this time of year. So that punch bite is just like killer. You just punch something on a lower tide and there's gonna be a fish there. It's just whether they bite or not. So
interesting. Is that a crawfish deal? Or I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I don't really know exactly why, but this, for whatever reason, this year is like the time to punch. I mean, there's crawfish all times of year in the Delta. You see them. You just stand up. You see crawfish everywhere. You see big old pinchers lying around. But actually, yesterday, the ones that I've seen are always bright red, like ruby red. You can't miss them. And man, I'll tell you what, there are some giant crawfish in there. You swear they're lobsters. It's wild. But awesome. Yeah, and funnily enough, I actually never really punch with a red punch bait. Yeah, it's always like black or blue, sometimes green pumpkin. I really like black or blue. I don't know why. It just seems to work. there's no reason to go against it. But I know, I think Ish Monroe won a tournament punching on the Delta with his D-bomb, and it was like a crawfish color.
Yeah, it was, what's the name of that color? Diablo or something like that? Was the color? Black,
Diablo.
yellow.
Yeah, and I think he had PB&J for one. So, I don't know if the color really matters that much. I think it's more of, the profile. I think the profile matters a little bit more, the size of your bait, some meatiness to it. And it's fun right now. The other day I got on a pretty good punch bite out on the Delta. And what's funny too is the crawfish, these big mats of hyacinth. If you don't know what hyacinth is, it's just like this. It kind of looks like lily pads on steroids, and we have a ton of hyacinth out on the Delta, but right underneath it, the crawfish will actually grab onto like the bases of them, and that's where a lot of people get their punch bite is when they punch through that hyacinth. They'll actually punch their bait, and then they'll yo-yo it up, and they'll knock the bottom of that hyacinth. Because if you just do, I've seen it happen. You'll take a clump of that hyacinth, and then just crawfish will fall off. And I think that's also what it imitates this time of year. I don't know if this time of year crawfish tend to like climb on the vines or whatever, but that is a good way to get a good punch bite too, is by banging your bait against the bases or bottoms of those hyacinth patties.
That is super interesting. Holy crap, that's awesome.
And you'll see too. Like I've pulled it out, and I've pulled out hyacinth before, and there's just like a pincher. You ever have what are they? The hermit crabs, and they climb the cage and then they fall, and their pincher gets stuck. It's kind of like that. So
that's crazy interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome.
I know that color red's popular in Texas. I know there's a bunch of guys that throw like a fire red worm or something like that. It must be the same sort of deal.
I've never seen one in the winter, but man, through April, through like the other day, like everyone that I've seen is just bright red. I'm sure they change colors a little bit in the winter, but seems to be they're obvious. You can see them real good.
Yeah, that's wow. That's so cool. Well, dude, I'm kind of curious too. So obviously you've been all over the place. So like obviously you've been in New York for a while. You went down. You had this whole swing. You spent like a whole season in Texas. And obviously you've had a few years at California now. Is there a place that you have not been to that's like atop the bucket list for you that you want to go either fish a tournament or spend a few days just on the water?
Oh, gosh. Honestly, nothing comes to mind that I haven't been to. I do want to get back to Texas, though. I'll admit that. I want to get back to East Texas, North Texas. A lot of my time was actually spent kind of in Central Texas, near the Austin, Texas area. I didn't get to fish North Texas that much, and then I did one other stint there for like a month and a half in East Texas, and that was a lot of fun. But East Texas and North Texas, just getting the taste of fork. I definitely want to go back. So Texas, I want to at least go there for maybe a 2 or 3 month period at some point, and just spend some time fishing.
No doubt. I think, being a fan of the YouTube for a long time, I think the biggest thing that I have not, because you cross off every category of fishing that you can think of, but I think the only one that you don't access, I think would be really cool because you would reach a lot of new viewers too, just thinking from a business mindset, is like a St. Clair stunt or something like that, where it's deep water smallmouth. Not that St. Clair's a deep water fishery, but something like that. That would be pretty cool. But
actually, that's a really good point. Yeah, and if you told me I could do that tomorrow, I'd hop on a plane. But yes, that is one thing I've never experienced, whether it be the spring or right now. I'm sure right now it's probably about to get real good. But yeah, those big smallmouth, those Great Lakes smallmouth, wherever up there, have not been able to do that. So I don't know, maybe if I can get myself back to New York next spring, I'll make the trek up to one of those lakes and try to get on some brown ones. I might need you as a guide though. I'm not sure really what I'm doing up there, and I know it gets pretty gnarly too.
Yeah, if you're going like Ontario, you can only go out there really if it's like a south wind. And that's about your only friend. Other than that, any other wind that above 3 miles an hour and you're sitting in some big rollers.
Yes.
It's not a lot of fun, especially from the kayak. I spent Thursday, Friday last week on Lake Ontario. My buddy and I practicing for a boat tournament on Saturday, and it was supposed. We woke up Saturday morning, said south wind at 6 until noon. We thought that was perfect. So we were running out of Schmo, and it opens up to Lake Ontario. We're going to make like a 4 or 5 mile run. And as soon as we go to the mouth of Schmo Bay, we're met with 6-footers, and it's southwest at 15. And we're like, yep, nope. Nope, these are tournament canceling waves. We're out of here. So,
dude, that's crazy. So what'd you guys do? Just go back towards the ramp area?
So pretty much it took us like 30 minutes, 35 minutes to get to one of our spots that we thought would be sheltered from the wind. And it was still windy. We were in like, it wasn't crazy. It was manageable, like 2-footers. It wasn't like anything crazy. And our fish were gone. They left that area. They moved with the wind. And so every other spot that we had was extremely exposed. And it would take so long. Plus, my buddy didn't want to risk breaking anything on his boat. So we're like, we just ran back into Schmo for the rest of the day and tried to figure out something and try to make the most of it. But it was tough. It's with this inaccurate weather right now. I was actually talking with Ellen that one of my buddies has a theory that it's the lack of flights, airplanes in the sky that's not giving us as much data. So that's why the weather is so inaccurate. I mean, it's always been inaccurate, but it's been much more noticeably inaccurate in recent, just because he thinks the less amount of flights, which I think is crazy interesting. But
yeah, that could be. Yeah, you're right though. Like those big brown ones make you earn them. I mean, whether it's the conditions or the fact that they just roam so much. I mean, other than the spring, I think you got to earn them for the most part. So I don't know how easy that would be from a kayak unless you know where they are. But again, like you said, they could be gone the next day.
Yeah, I mean, it is very tough. And, from the kayak on a Great Lake, it's, Ontario is extremely difficult. But like a Lake Erie, out of Buffalo is actually a lot easier, just because there's a healthier there's a more condensed population of fish because that current pushes through Erie from west to east. So naturally Buffalo is going to hold a lot of fish. So if you just drift around Erie in above 10 foot or like deeper than 10 foot with a tube and you're just drifting around, you're going to catch a bass. It ain't too hard to catch a fish out there. Nice. But obviously there's a lot more to it, but it's a fun thing to do, man. Cause in most cases, if you get a bait in front of one of those Great Lakes smallmouth, they're going to eat. It's very rare cases I've found, and it's completely spun me out when you know that you have one on the graph, you drop down, you watch them chase it, and you don't get bit. And it's just very rarely does that happen. But yeah, the hard part is figuring out their patterns, their kind of how they move around with the winds. And then with season changing, obviously they come up to spawn and it's much easier to figure them out then. But when they leave, it's trying to figure out where they're going to go, how they're going to move throughout each condition. It can be pretty tough to find them, and that's the hard part. But it's definitely its own game in itself. But
yeah, they're worth it though. I mean, man, I've seen some of those bags they're pulling out. Gosh, didn't someone have where was it? 28, 30-pound bags aren't uncommon, right?
No. It took Douglas had opening weekend, had a tournament out of St. Lawrence River, and it took 31 pounds to win that one.
That's insane. That's just not even real.
Yeah. It's unbelievable the fisheries around there. It's insane. Yeah, I think, and we can talk more offline here. There's just some crazy stuff that New York has that I can't believe it took me this long to figure it out. It's just unbelievable.
There's probably still a lot of hidden gems in New York too. I'm sure there's a lot of hidden because for whatever reason, I don't think whether it's social media or not, I think it partly is, but also just like venues for major tournaments, like New York's not really on the map. Like everywhere else, southeast, out west, even, you've got people it's a bad term, but it's not meant to be bad, but you're, exposing the lake or the fishery. And you just don't really see that in New York. I mean, Cayuga, I guess, but Bass has been there and everything else. But there's a lot of other little gems that I don't think folks know about. So
New York is on the map for the month of August for professional bass fishing, and that's usually about it. Because that's usually the amount of time when everyone goes up there for it. Because everything sucks so bad down south, they decide they have to come up north. But it's kind of, it's a good and bad. Like it's cool. It's nice because we don't get as much pressure up here, right? Because if you took the amount of pressure, say like a Gunnersville got, and you put it on one of our lakes, I mean, we already thought pressure was bad as it is. I mean, it would be unbelievable if you try to take that pressure and move it up here. But because it's kind of nice because we can kind of, for the most part, you kind of have it to yourself. It's not as pressured. But at the same point in time, it would be kind of cool to see, what it could be capable of. But I think in recent years, especially with more years of having these smallmouth exposed to gobies, you're seeing what it's capable of. And you see some guys come out with some absolute magnums. I mean, you saw Paul Mueller on Bassmaster almost break the New York State record with a 713, 714, something ridiculous. And it's crazy. And it's not only the Great Lakes. Like, we have a bunch of lakes around here that can put out some giant smallmouth.
It makes you wonder: is there a double-digit smallmouth swimming around somewhere? You'd have to think.
There's gotta be.
There's so much water. That's crazy to think about. A double-digit smallmouth. I mean, I can't even fathom.
Yeah, I mean, there was the state record was tied in the month of August in 8.4, and if it's like that in August, then who knows what that thing is in the fall or the spring. And that's an old fish.
Yeah.
That fish has seen some stuff.
Yep. And you've seen so many, people catching 5-6 pounders. I mean, give them another 5-6 years. We'll see. I mean, I'm not sure how the winters are going to affect, the lifespan of those fish, but there's potential for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, Thursday, Friday on Lake Ontario, my buddy and I had 24 pounds barely even touching our spots. And that just says enough as it is. Like, they're special fisheries. That's pretty much how you can leave it at. But I'm convinced one of these Finger Lakes has a double-digit largemouth. I'm convinced.
It might. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, what is it, Cayuga? Even you caught what, like a couple of 7s last year out of Cayuga? I mean,
no, I've never caught a 7. I caught 5 over 6 this year, and they're all between 6 and 6.2 because my PB is 6.2, and I've yet to break it because I only can catch them in between the 6 and 6.2, and it frustrates the hell out of me.
Well, you'll do that at Chickamauga. You'll get like a 9 or something like that.
Hopefully, yeah, that would be kind of.
And when you see it, you're just gonna like.
Is that real?
Right on the spot. Dude, it's crazy. Even like catching, like I have my PB's only like 8.14 or something like that. But other than that, I've only like the big fish I caught have only been like around 7 pounds. But dude, even like those 7 pounders, because like I'm used to 4 or 5 pound fish being like, whoa, giant. But dude, like even like a 7 pounder looks ridiculous. And
I'm sure I'll catch like I'm not saying I'm sure, because knock on wood, I hope I do. But say like hypothetically, if I catch a 7 down on Chick, I'm gonna look at me like that's a 10.
Yeah, dude, I did the same thing.
So much longer. Yeah.
I still do it. I see 7 in the water, and I'm like, oh, it's a 9. It's 7, but dude, it's hard to tell after 7. I think they just all look massive. But I'm sure if one day either of us land a 10 or get near a 10, it's gonna just look like a freak in nature. Yeah. I saw it Clear Lake, the shop we had the captain's meeting for the bass event. It was Clear Lake Outdoors, but they had a replica of the lake record, and I think it was a 16 and change.
Oh,
dude, like doesn't look real. Like a 16-pound bass, like it looks like a small dog. Like it's just the girth. It's ridiculous. Like I can't imagine even someone catching a fish like that, but even like a 10. I mean, crazy.
Unreal. Yeah, it's I'm excited for Chick. That should be a fun one for sure. And I mean, even at that, I mean, who knows where we're gonna go in Texas in March? That could have the potential there too.
Dude, if you don't break your PB in the next year, I think you're gonna. I think I'll say that. I think you're gonna. If you're gonna fish those two tournaments, then I'm sure you'll probably fish some other stuff. But you're
Yeah.
gonna. I have a feeling you'll have your shot at least.
I hope so. Let's just say I've had my shot at the smallmouth. I broke my smallmouth PB twice this year, and I've had the shot to break it again 2 more times. Oh, we got you?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. It like lagged out for a second, but
Yep.
yeah, both times I screwed it up, dropped them somehow. I've rarely ever lose fish on drop shot ever, except when they're big. It's just a weird thing to me.
Did you have the net with you, or was it a
One of them was at least a 6 on the St. Lawrence River. Clear as day, watch it come skying up, and I'm pulled down, trying to keep it down. There's no stopping a 6 when it wants to come to the surface. And it just threw it. And then the other one pretty much did kind of the same thing and just kept tail walking at the surface. And I'm like, I can't do anything about it besides keep tension. And just threw it right at me. So I was like, oh,
dude,
saving me for 7. That's all it is.
I think that's the other thing we forget about too, is when you have a fish on the end of your line that big, like they're that big and they're a lot stronger than your other fish you've got. My Obidi Williams, the people's champ out here.
Yeah.
Well, he's got on his resume, I think, over 20 double digits, a lot of which were on the Delta, a lot of which were punching. And, punching, big rod, big stick, big line. I mean, you're setting into them, you're winching them out of there. He said the ones that he caught over like 9 pounds and then, of course, the double digits, like he swings into them and he just gets pulled back, even from a boat. Like it's just crazy how strong the big fish are too. So yeah, that's the other part of it. You can hook into them, but then landing them, I'm sure your percentages go down as well.
Yep. Yeah. It's but it's part of the fun in it, right? It's part of the battle.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, in your opinion, not saying what is the epitome, but to you, what is your goal each season, or what is your goal moving forward in the future, tournament wise, like championship wise, to win? Like, what do you want to have? What do you want to be known for? I guess maybe not known for, but what do you want to have on your resume that you won?
Man, it's a good question. And, it's a hard question because I feel like every year you've got new series, new championships, new TOCs.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'd say, as far as the next few years, I want to continue on with, the tournament scene. I want to fish all the big events. I want to try to eventually make a southeast swing, because let's be honest, like that's just where it's going to happen. I mean, we can talk about how California gets left out or whatnot, but there's a reason for that, and it's what happened with the boat tournaments. We're just too far away. So I do want to try to at least get to the southeast for a portion of a year to try to compete in some of those major tournament circuits. And as far as a goal, I don't know. I just the main thing is definitely have fun out there, because I've said this before, but like the tournaments and the fishing itself is just it's fun for me. It's a passion. So I don't want to get too consumed and and too stressed out about it. And honestly, I feel I fish better when I'm not thinking about it as much, when I'm not as stressed, when I don't put too much pressure on myself. But yeah, just go out there, have some fun, fish some major circuits. I mean, I'd love to win another Angler of the Year. If I were to pick a goal, I think an Angler of the Year in any of the major circuits would be a really good achievement. But yeah, as it progresses and hopefully it continues on with this train, and it looks to be as if maybe there will be at one point a true professional kayak tournament series. Not saying that that's going to be like Bass or FLW or MLF, but there will be something of that sort. I think that would be cool to compete in that. And like I have a flexible work schedule, so I think I could make it work. So that would be another goal too, is to, when that time comes, to be able to fish it.
Pretty sweet, dude. I like that answer. Yeah. When you talk to like a bunch of these boat guys, a lot of them say, the classic, and you have your MLF guys, want to win the Red Crest and different stuff like that. But it's cool to see you want to stay in the scene, you want to stay competitive, and just being consistently, at the top. That's pretty sweet.
And I don't know if we really have that right now. I don't know if we have you could say
Holy Grail.
Well, yeah, we've got the, KBF National Championship that you have to put up there. But that's kind of a different animal, with the number of competitors. And don't get me wrong, whoever wins that, that's amazing. That is an incredible accomplishment. But I think, I don't know if we have like a true, I think maybe the Hobie BOS, the TOC, Tournament of Champions is something people are kind of putting at their top goal, just because you have to qualify and then you have to, beat all these other anglers that qualified in a smaller field. But I don't know if we have like a true classic or red crest right now, so to speak, in, the kayak series.
Yeah, we'll see. In the next 5 years, I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of where the whole tournament scene goes for kayak and what kind of arises, what might kind of precede a bunch of, maybe there's a championship that's created that kind of precedes all. That would be kind of interesting. But we won't know until something really kind of arises and see what happens. And everything's like you said, everything's kind of fresh. Like Bass is in its first year, Hobie's in its second year. We're gonna have to see where things go. But dude, my last question for you, and I'm just curious, and I know you said you wanted to make it out to a couple different locations, but do you have any plans for the YouTube channel for 2021?
Nothing too specific. More travel, more tournaments for sure. Yeah, man, it's just I'm not sure where exactly I'll be in 2021. I'm hoping to be, in Texas, and then be in New York for a little while. Of course, California for, part of the year, majority of the year. But yeah, my goal for 2021 is just to fish as many tournaments as possible, and just have some fun and continue on as is. So nothing crazy, and that's the plan.
Yeah, dude. I look forward to seeing it and watching you, and hopefully you can get back to New York and we can link up and chase some smallmouth, dude. But I want to say,
I'll tell you what, I'll be there in Christmas time. So if you want to show me how to catch smallmouth in the snow, I'm down.
Hey, December 28th, I was catching some, so we can make that happen.
All right,
we can make it happen if we have the winter like we had this past winter. But we'll see as time gets closer. We'll keep in touch and see what we can do. But dude, I appreciate you taking the time out and coming back on. It was good to talk to you again, man.
Thanks for having me, man. Always good times.
Heck yeah. Well, we'll talk soon, and I'll send you a message here offline, and we can chat about a couple different things.
All righty, man. We'll see you.
All right. Take care. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed that podcast there with Greg. We talked about his 2020 season thus far. He obviously has a few tournaments left to go. We talked about some plans for 2021. Obviously, like you mentioned, he has a date highlighted in December where he's going to have to figure out his 2021 season because, like everybody knows right now, there is really no solid long-term plan. Everything right now seems to be week by week, day by day, with the times that we're living in right now. But hopefully, like you mentioned, there's some stability in 2021, and he can go access some more tournaments, travel a bit more. And I hope he can make that happen because the dude's very talented. He can go a lot of places. He knows what he's doing when it comes to the tournament fishing, when it comes to strategy, mentally preparing, physically preparing. He's definitely one of the best in the kayak scene. So thank you again to Greg for coming on. You guys head down in the description below, follow him on Instagram, as well as subscribe to his YouTube channel. He has a very successful YouTube channel, makes great content. You guys, if you have not already, you probably live under a rock, but go check it out if you guys can't. Or if you guys have not already, excuse me. It is late tonight, and I'm about to fall asleep, but my speech is failing me right now. But I want to give a huge shout out right now to Morgan Marine and Team Hobie. I'm putting more days next week on the Hobie Outback because in 2 days we have our bow season opener, which I'll spend 2 days up in the tree stand. Try to maybe get out a day or two this weekend. Try to get some fishing in. But looking forward to spending more time in the Outback. And obviously, that main goal is to get ready for November down at Lake Chickamauga. That should be a blast, and hopefully we can do well down there. And the big goal is to learn. But huge shout out to Morgan Marine. Thank you to Ryan hooking me up with the Hobie. Looking forward to spending more time in that and getting more adjustments in it and getting that thing ready to go for tournaments. Huge shout out to Amped Outdoors. Thank you guys for your support. This podcast quite literally is powered by Amped Outdoors. So thank you guys. If you guys are in the market for a lithium battery, please go down the description below and check out Amped Outdoors. Beyond the most affordable and high-performing lithium battery on the market by far. If you don't believe me, just go check out their prices compared to competitors. But like I mentioned in the intro, thank you to Douglas. Thank you guys for your constant support. And thank you to Queen Tackle. If you guys are in the market for any premium terminal tackle, jigs, anything tungsten, you can use code SeriousAngler20 at checkout. Save yourself 20% off. But I really do appreciate all you guys for tuning in, especially if you're still listening right now. I do appreciate it very, very much. I hope you guys can keep tuning in. If you guys are watching on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up. Comment any questions you'd like us to ask anglers. If you're listening through any MP3 software, any podcast application, we'd love it if you could submit a review and a rating. Would really appreciate it. It would help us get better, help us get more recognition so that our anglers that come on here are exposing themselves to a broader audience, which helps them grow. And that's what we are here for. So thank you guys again for watching and listening. We'll see you guys next time.